Erin's eyes opened wide. She felt how clumsy and heavy her body had become. She felt strange. Erin looked at her small, soft, chubby hands. She had become a child and she was horrified to think she had ended up in hell. She began to hit her chubby hands on the bed, alarmed, but then Jaren remembered that she was the daughter of the Namgung clan and a sword demon who lived to avenge her family. Haran looked around and didn't notice the guards, so she began to think about how she could escape the unknown Namgung room. She gathered all her strength to try to break the curse, but her inner energy here had disappeared. The idea that they had deliberately deprived her of her powers and her adult body through witchcraft made Jaren burst into tears. She screamed indignantly throughout the unknown house because she had spent so much effort studying her power. An unknown woman took her in her arms and immediately asked her with sympathy and a smile what was wrong with her baby. This woman turned out to be the Namgung nanny. Aaron was completely confused and outraged. She had really returned to childhood. With tears in her eyes, Namgung began to remember. Many memories had faded over time, but one of them remains firmly engraved in my memory. It was at the dinner to celebrate Jiren's 5th birthday that it was discovered she couldn't learn martial arts. Jiren couldn't match her brothers and sister, neither in intelligence nor in martial arts, so she heard over and over that she was a disgrace to the family. Many nights Heron studied books in secret, but in the family Namgung, there was no place for mediocrity, and the youngest daughter was ignored. Only a faithful nanny was always willing to lend her shoulder and provide support no matter what they whispered behind her back. The nanny was always there and comforted Haran. But when Heron was 8 years old, the nanny died and Namgung lost her support and a piece of her heart. Heron recognized the nanny and broke down crying, and the nanny smiled softly in response. The nanny asked the maid to prepare a bath for the baby. While Heron thought about how strange the magic she could do was turning back time, she sadly thought that everything happening now was just a hallucination. A few days later, nothing had changed the baby. Erin remained in bed all day, ate as expected. They carried her in their arms, washed her, and dressed her. One day, Erin woke up to the sound of a rattle. Thoughts of failed revenge filled her head. The maid took Heron in her arms and took her to be changed. Heron looked around and recognized her room, expensive fabrics, rich decorations. Erin was surprised to think she had been raised in such luxury. Erin sadly remembered that she grew up in wealth and love until her family discovered she was an ordinary girl. But Erin decided to enjoy her new life. The maid returned to the room and took Erin in her arms. To take her back to the room, Haran decided to make the most of her new life with only 5 years left until the turning point. Haran began to like her new life. She thought it was cute to be a girl since the moment of the family's death. Namgung until his own death, Haran couldn't sleep peacefully, but now she felt cared for and could allow herself to relax and not think about her death. The maid put Erin to bed and began to lament the cruelty of the young knights and ladies of the house who did not visit the baby. The maid remembered that during the clan funeral and Jaran's illness, none of them had visited the baby. She lamented with frustration while Haram thought about how quickly she had gotten used to that kind of treatment. Jaram thought nostalgically that only during this period was she considered part of the Namgung family, and she got lost in memories. Aaron turned around at the loud knock on the door, and the shouts directed at her. 2 women appeared at the door saying that Aaron was accused of trying to poison the daughter of the Iron Blood Alliance leader and must be punished. The warriors, armed to the teeth, forcibly tied up Aaron, who could not defend herself. Aaron was accused of a crime she did not commit. That day, her small and peaceful world shattered. 2 warriors dragged Aaron tied by the arms, and the whispers of the lords were heard everywhere. The warriors pushed until she was on her knees, and she stood before the clan elder. It was Lee of the Namgung clan, the property administrator, who said that Jiren must submit to the demands of the Iron Blood Alliance leader. Jiren was outraged because she was not the one who poisoned the daughter of the Iron Blood Alliance leader. One of the alliance ambassadors pointed a sword at Heron and shouted that the daughter of his clan leader drank the tea Heron brought and was poisoned. The elder laughed thoughtfully and asked the ambassador to calm down since the decision had already been made, and the evidence against Heron had been confirmed. The Namgung clan elder confirmed he would hand over the criminal Jiren to the alliance. Despite her excuses, the Iron Blood Alliance warriors openly laughed in Jiren's face. While the Namgung clan people whispered behind her back when she tried to justify herself, no one listened and conclusions were drawn. Jiren shouted that she would never do anything that could tarnish the Namgung clan because she was also part of the clan and family. The head of the Namgung family, Namgung Choi, Jiren's older brother, entered the hall. Aaron sadly thought he was not on her side because without the leader's consent, the warriors would not have dared to enter the main palace and take Aaron away. The men told Choi they would hand over Jiren to the alliance, but he only asked if that was truly the alliance's wish. The ambassador proudly replied that the Iron Blood Alliance and the Namgung family were allies and that handing over Haran was a true act of generosity. Choi Namgung sent the alliance warriors back and said that the clan Namgung would not hand over its descendants to anyone. Haran looked at her brother surprised, not understanding why he was taking her side when he could have denied it or pretended nothing had happened. Choi simply replied that she was part of the family she had sworn to protect Haran. He couldn't believe her and shouted at her to hand her over to the alliance and not to create problems for the family to protect the clan. She thought the clan would have lived in peace and quiet if she had not been born. There would have been no tragedy in the family. Namgung, but Choi thought differently and told Haran that she was part of the family, so he would not hand her over to the people of the alliance. He said that Jaren had been part of the family since she was born, and that the Namgung clan would not abandon her. Choi sent Haran back with Kanggu and added that he and Seonggu would catch up. Seonggu carefully took a hairpin from her hair and gave it to Heron. That day Heron regained everything she had lost and realized that for Choi and Seonggu, she was more precious than their lives. Heron found out that Eunchen had developed several strategies for her, asking her to find Wani from the Golden Scale trading company Golden Scale and let him know that time was up. Heron realized how much Kanggu appreciated and protected her to his last breath. That day Aran found everything she had longed for and lost everything, and then swore to avenge her lost family. So many years under the same roof, and all they would know about their brothers and sister was how dear the clan was to them. She wondered why, between her and the clan they chose her, Heron could never discover the answer, because she was the only one who survived from the entire clan. The little one's eyes opened and a soft blue light surrounded her. As she extended her small chubby hand in front of her, her 15-year-old brother, Namgung Choi, was with his arms crossed, gently placed the palm of his hand on the baby's forehead and nodded with satisfaction. The temperature had dropped. Choi said he was surprised the last time Heron smiled so brightly despite the intense heat. His words made Aaron think and realize the reality of what was happening. He remembered what happened a few days ago. A soft hand touched Namgung's hot forehead, recalling the touch of a nanny. Haran opened her eyes with a smile and made a sound of satisfaction, hoping to see her beloved nanny, but saw the surprised face of her brother Namgung. Choi, in response to the frightened murmurs of the girl, Choi smiled cheerfully. The great sword of the Namgung clan, Namgung Choi, was a genius destined to rise above the clan after the bloody war with the blood cult. He was the embodiment of moderation and calm. His thoughts were impossible to read when Heron was sick and refused to eat when she dressed in her best clothes to please him. Choi remained as cold as ice, Heron thought. Making her older brother smile was a chimera, and considered the memories of her love were just a dream. While little Heron was sick, Kanggu visited her secretly, following her older brother. And one day later the caring Sorin appeared. The care and love of brothers and sisters were not a dream nor inspired by fever. They really came to visit the sick person they were in the memories of Jaren Nambung Sorin. She often heard humiliations directed at her younger sister, but Kambu always overlooked them with pride. She also heard the bullying and was present during it, but did nothing to stop it. The little one, Jaren, shuddered, thinking that her indifference could have been part of a test and a way to cultivate a strong spirit within her. Meanwhile, Choi pulled a golden rattle with bright red rubies from his sleeve and gave the gift to little Jairan. Choi shook the rattle with a serious expression, and the curious girl watched his movements with delight. Despite her joy, Heran could not trust her brothers and sister. She still considered herself a disgrace and a stain on the clan, and could not believe in their love. Choi interrupted Jaran's serious thoughts with a laugh and gently tapped her soft, chubby cheek. He watched her attempts to pout with a smile and carefully spun a beautiful golden rattle. 5 years later, the situation could change. Jaran remembered the humiliation and coldness of her family, so she decided to trust her brother. Little Jaran proudly extended her hand toward her brother and asked him to give her the golden rattle, but Choi, with a sweet smile, put the toy away in the red chest so the girl wouldn't get hurt. With a loud scream, Aaron burst into tears in front of her brother. Panicked, Choi approached his crying sister, not knowing how to calm her. Jaran stared at him, unwilling to give up so easily. Then Choi took the girl to her lessons, and her calm aura, warm and majestic, instantly calmed Jaran, and she fell asleep. Choi remembered the first time he saw his little sister in their mother's arms and was able to hold her. She always fell asleep quickly in his arms. The next day the maid took care of Erin with a smile and praised her for her childish mischief, calling her cute. It was then that Haran thought, for the first time looking at her baby face in the mirror, that she could consider herself beautiful. A random thought made Haran remember that in high society she had another nickname, the thorny flower Namgung. Rumors circulated that insolent men captivated by Namgung's appearance felt hurt by her sharp words and cold attitude. While Heron remembered her past, the nanny commented on how the second night had fainted, causing an uproar throughout the estate. He was bedridden, and no one in the house cared about his condition, nor that of his lover. The maid enthusiastically listed all the gossip of the estate, and mentioned the employment of her dear nanny Haran, which aroused the child's curiosity. The nanny appeared at the threshold with a serious and frowning face and scolded the maid for her carelessness. Haran couldn't bear to look at the upset maid, so she decided to cheer up the sad nanny. The girl tangled in the long sleeves of her clothes and began to dance with a wide smile. The nanny picked up Heron in her arms with a gentle smile and hugged her. Heron snuggled closer to her nanny and inhaled the familiar scent of orchids, which made her eyelids grow heavy, and she fell into a pleasant sleep. A man's voice woke her from her sleep and was persistently scolding the nanny. Haran recognized him as Elder Lee, the man who would hand her over to the Iron Blood Alliance in the future. She remembered the leader and the Namgung brothers, their strengths and hidden talents that were revealed over time. Elder Lee said that the previous head of the family brought the Namgung brothers and sisters off the street, and they looked like dirty vagabonds. Within a year, each of them had taken a worthy place in the clan and had gained universal recognition, revealing their talent. According to the elder, little Heron had hidden potential, so he urged the nanny to make the girl trust her. The scent of orchids made little Heron wonder if the nanny always smelled like flowers like Elder Lee, and made a connection. One day the nanny yelled at the maid for giving Jairan regular food. Young Jairan couldn't stand the yelling and confessed to her nanny that she herself had asked the maid to give her some regular food. The nanny leaned over Heron and cupped her face, asking the little girl to trust only her. Erin wanted to oppose and defend the maid, but the nanny stood firm. The nanny watched the food Erin ate, the clothes she wore, and her social circle, and Erin perceived her gestures as care, but the more Erin followed her nanny's advice, the lonelier she felt. Remembering her past, Erin couldn't help but think about how much her nanny loved her and was sincere with her. Little Jaren couldn't believe that not even her nanny, the only person who cared for her, loved her. Little Jaren's thoughts were interrupted by a frightened Sorin who suddenly appeared at the threshold of her younger sister's room. Choi Namgong's twin sister, Namgong Seorin, was always by the young master's side and ensured the family's stability from within. Throughout the Morim Plains, she was spoken of as a talented lady of the Namgong clan, a model of elegance like a lotus. Seeing her scared was unusual for Heron. Sorin, excited, picked up the baby in her arms and took her temperature. A warm look and a gentle touch on her back helped Karen calm down and snuggle closer to her sister's body. Erin thought sadly that maybe she was too old to remember how lovingly her brothers and sister had treated her. Maybe she had forgotten everything due to the shock. The family's current kindness only confused Haran and her feelings even more, and she couldn't distinguish truth from lies. Haran already knew what her family's fate would be, so she broke down crying in her sister's arms due to the strong emotion. Erin wasn't seeking money or riches, she wanted simple human warmth and couldn't fully enjoy it now. Being in the body of a child, she knew fate would separate her inexorably from the family she had reunited with. Hearing her younger sister's cries, Soren couldn't hold back her own tears, she confessed to Erin, who had been studying a mountain of documents for days and nights to be able to free herself as soon as possible. And see her little sister Soren cried without knowing how to calm the baby, and Haran looked at her and couldn't believe she saw her sister like that. The sister didn't cry when the fire devoured the family estate, didn't cry when the family was attacked. Soren kept smiling while she and Choi stayed behind, holding off the attackers until the end at the cost of their own lives. To Erin's surprise, the constant Soren complained to her about her brothers, about her secondary branch relatives, about the merchants who didn't take her into account because of her age. Soren was dissatisfied with the clan situation and angry about her own powerlessness holding the frightened Heron in her arms. According to Soren, under the previous heading, the relatives didn't dare open their mouths, but now they considered her and Choi easy prey. They wasted the family fortune piece by piece and enjoyed wealth that wasn't theirs. Thus the unbreakable Soren presented herself to her younger sister as a young girl who was tired of the burden of responsibility of her family. Everything she did now was new to her, whether it was managing family affairs or taking care of young Haran. She was only 15 years old. Haran couldn't bear to see her sister cry and smiled widely to cheer her up. Soren's expression changed immediately and she hugged the baby tighter. Her smile blossomed. Soren always knew how to find common ground with people, but when her relatives asked her about marriage, she swore to remain loyal to the clan and not marry Aaron, thought that even then it was clear that her sister had a lively and rebellious character. Haran never knew why her family decided to side with her at the last moment. But she was determined not to let the family fall. She was no longer a thorny flower able to defend herself only with sharp words. She is the cruel demon Namgong Heran, and she doesn't give up easily on the morning of the new day. The maid tried to feed the dissatisfied Heron, but it was in vain. Not even the strict nanny could influence the girl. The maid was worried about Jaren's health, but the nanny was inflexible and asked not to force the baby to eat if she didn't want to. Little Jaren didn't need food. The twins Choi and Soren carefully brought food to their rooms. Every night the baby refused to eat in the mornings, partly because of the nanny. She began to suspect that there were selfish motives in her care. The maid took the baby in her arms and encouraged herself, and began telling around the latest news from the estate. The meeting of the 5 great families was scheduled for next month. So the young leader was very busy at that moment. These were the 5 great Tang clans, Peng, Segalmochon, and Namgong. Every year the 5 Murim clans met to determine the current state of affairs and demonstrate a model of harmony and interrelation among the clans. In reality, this was an eternal clarification of the leadership of the Garen clan. She was preparing to cause a stir at the meeting and take revenge on the enemies who did not come to help her family. Jaran wanted to expose the nanny. She cried without cessar for 4 days in his arms, and the family began to worry. The blame for the baby's illness fell on the nanny. The intuition of a direct descendant of Namgong told Hiran that the nanny was not on her side. The nanny was a subject of the Namgong family, therefore she was responsible for the baby's condition before the clan. If the baby's condition worsened, the nanny would be the first to be blamed and the clan members would suspect something was wrong. The nanny was too busy keeping her secrets to call the doctor, which upset Karen and made her doubt her nanny even more. The girl decided that the meeting of the 5 clans was the perfect time to expose the nanny without the nanny knowing. The maid called a doctor. Worried about Jaren's condition, the maid was really worried about Heron and said the baby needed someone who could take care of her. Neither the head of the family nor Heron's relatives, not even the nannies according to the maid, could provide the necessary care. The maid spent a lot of time with the baby, telling her about her brothers and sisters, believing that one day Heron would have reliable support. She admitted she was willing to give her life for Heron. The next day the nanny was interrupted by the appearance of a man. He was the doctor of the Namgong family, Nogag. From the door, he asked the nanny why she was not worried about the baby's illness and lack of appetite. The doctor leaned over Namgong, who was asleep, amazed by her serene appearance. The baby's eyes suddenly opened and she began to scream. Her screams echoed throughout the clan's property and disturbed the healer, the nanny, and the maid who were leaning over her. The doctor touched the baby's hand and said the girl's energy was depleted. She had been screaming and enduring discomfort for so long. The nanny remained firm and said the baby cried more when she saw strangers. The doctor reproached the nanny for her poor response. and she burst out in indignation. The doctor paid no attention to the nanny's words. He took the baby in his arms and took her out of the room. The nanny tried to stop the doctor, but he pushed her aside and told her he would report the baby's condition. To the clan leader, the nanny could not contain herself and called the baby a little demon in front of the doctor, hinting that the elder would be displeased. The doctor was not surprised by the nanny's outburst. He suspected she was in collusion with the elder, so he quietly took the little one. Heron out of the room, the nanny went to see the clan leader to blame the court doctor for Heron's illness. The nanny fell to her knees before the leader and begged for mercy. She claimed she was the only one on the estate who cared for the baby. The young lord did not believe the nanny and accused her of indifference. The nanny could not believe that the young woman of the Namgung family, rejected by everyone, would become an obstacle. Winning her favor and love turned out to be very difficult. The nanny tried to dissuade the clan leader, but unsuccessfully he expelled her. The nanny accused the clan leader of indifference towards her own sister, remembering that he was not there when she lost her father and suffered from a fever, but the chief stood firm and found the nanny guilty of causing harm to a member of the Namgung family. The guards grabbed the nanny and took her out of the hall. Aram thought happily that now she was free from the nanny's influence. Choi turned around worried while Jaren was falling asleep. The doctor handed the baby to Choi and told him that now his older brother should take care of her. Choi remembered the important words of Achon. Jairan was the weak point of the family, so it was decided not to show the slightest affection towards her from then on. Choi distanced himself from his sister, and there was no turning back. Choi knew Achon would be angry with him, but he couldn't stay away from the baby and pulled her closer to him. With a smile blossoming on his face, an unknown person appeared in the sleeping baby's bedroom. The feeling of another person's presence disturbed the sleeping Jairan. The baby woke up with a loud cry and turned over. The stranger's face seemed vaguely familiar to her. It was Achon with blood running from his lips, telling Haran, the adult, to run from the house and save herself. Namgung Wunchun had always had poor health, but recently his cough had worsened, and he almost fainted in front of little Haran. Aran was hysterical, wanting to help her brother, but her weak child body was powerless. The baby managed to turn over in the crib by herself and almost fell, but Achon caught her and hugged her. Achon placed the baby on the bed and she grabbed his bloody finger with a smile. Achon took out a handkerchief and carefully cleaned Jairan's palms. The girl's actions seemed careless to him, but he was loving and devoted to his little sister. Neither Achon nor the others wished any harm to Jairan. But the little girl was waiting for the moment they would be disappointed in her when the baby fell asleep. Choi Nam-gong looked toward the bedroom. Achon told his brother that the baby was healthy, and the doctor's predictions turned out to be correct. Chon left the bedroom saying he would show the family a worthy example of what it means to care for the baby. The baby regained her appetite, and the maid was glad that Jaren had recovered. The maid, Soso, was worried about Jaren because she was under the nanny's supervision, but all the servants confirmed that Soso was on the baby's side and that she was going to call a doctor. Now the nanny shares the latest rumors of the Namgong clan with Hieran. Soso reported that the second young master Hunshin was coughing up blood again, but was already recovering and was preparing to visit the baby and the young lady. Soren severely scolded one of the managers yesterday. Kanbu had an unbearable character and scolded his servants for every little thing. The girl thought sadly that Kanbu's appearance would only worsen her headache. Soso also reported that the nanny had already been punished. The Elder Shang and Elder O discussed how they should proceed now to destroy the clan along with the courtier. Together with the courtier, they decided to increase the medicine dose for Achon to worsen his illness. The plan had to be completed before the young knight with his sharp intuition could discover everything. Achon was preparing to take a new dose of medicine. Little Hiran was lying in her bed, bored, but Choi and Soren hadn't visited her for a long time. And Namgung Wunchun approached the baby and watched her from the corner. He didn't pick up the baby. He didn't feed her like his older brother and sister. He watched her silently and left after another coughing fit. Achon dropped his spoon. Namgung noticed that his silver spoon had darkened. The girl reached out her hand, trying to stop Achon. She knew that silverware changed color when it came into contact with poison. Namgung Wunchun was in poor health and therefore couldn't learn martial arts, but thanks to his outstanding intellect, he was considered a brilliant strategist of the clan. He clearly knew they were trying to poison him but did nothing. This meant there was a force behind the poisoning that couldn't be underestimated. Aaron began to think about what he should do to warn his family about the danger. Then the baby started a hunger strike again and her crying wouldn't stop, so wanted to call a doctor. But Choi understood what the girl's plan was. He made clear to her who she needed and who she didn't. He realized she needed a certain person and asked to call Achon. As soon as Achon appeared, the baby stopped crying and Choi noticed it. Choi asked Achon with a smile to feed the baby, but his brother refused grumpily. The baby cried again upon hearing the response and only calmed down in the arms of Achon. Achon couldn't put the baby in danger. Showing his affection, the elders were worried about him. Achon admitted he took poison on purpose. To give the elders a false sense of security, he urged Choi not to play family games, but to focus on keeping his own title. Anshin was afraid the plan would be revealed, but Choi urged him to calm down. Anshin was terrified. He didn't want to put his sister in danger, but he denied it in front of his family. Namgung Wonjun was a born genius capable of calculating 1000 moves ahead. But he didn't understand his own feelings. Meanwhile, Choi revealed that not long ago, The Tang family from Sichuan went to the province for a clan leaders meeting and was attacked by assailants. Unknown at the Anhui border, Heron was horrified she couldn't understand. Who dared to attack a clan known for its ruthless revenge against those who offended them? Choi suspected the elders, but according to Anshan, they never left any trace. Anshan received a secret document with a plan detailed to attack the clan and corrected the start date of the operation thanks to Anshan. The attack didn't happen while the clan was there. Choi was horrified the plan could have turned into a complete disaster for the Namgong clan. But Achan said with a smile that the collapse would have waited for another Namgong family. A family of traitors, Choi awaited the destruction of the internal enemies so that the clan would be freed. And belonged to a true family, the elders wanted to use the attack on the clan Tang and the poisoning of Achong as an excuse to strip Choi of his title. The elders could not touch Achong due to his fatal illness. So the safest place for his sister was beside him. Uncho was willing to sacrifice his life for his family. He said everything would end after the clan meeting. The next day, the maid brought lunch to the girl and Unchon. Namgong could not accept his brother's carelessness. He took the poison too calmly. In his past life, Namgong had suffered from poisons. So he knew the danger they posed for his brother Unshan. He kept the baby's utensils separate and fed his sister himself. Unshan did not look at his food while eating. Namgong was afraid that his brother's food might also be poisoned and shouted. The food from the spoon fell on Hunchan's sleeve. Hunchan turned around, worried. While Heran bit his sleeve with satisfaction, a small dose of poison was supposed to cause indigestion in Jiran and force the family to prevent the reckless brother from taking poison, but a small dose of poison caused a burning sensation and the baby began coughing up blood. Ancho, shouting to call the doctor and his older brother, took the baby out of the room. The 2 days following the treatment, they had to decide Heron's fate. Unchon asked his older brother if he wanted to continue with his plan or allow Unchon to sacrifice himself for the Choi family. He admitted that the decision of Achong to let himself be poisoned to expose the conspiracy was the easiest, but he also admitted that it was a mistake not to stop his brother from the start. Unchon became enraged and admitted he was willing to make any sacrifice to protect his family and that he could take the future of the clan into his own hands. Because of the incident with his sister, Choi called a clan council, including the elders, so that Hunchan could stop taking poison from the beginning. Choi had no intention of following Hunchan's plan. To prevent him from dying, the weakened Hunchan lost consciousness and collapsed at his older brother's feet. Meanwhile, rumors circulated in the clan estate. The head of the family burst into the elders' chamber and took them with him. The servants suspected that they were the ones who poisoned the baby, and Lord Anjan, the baby, kept waking up and falling asleep constantly because of the poison, and one night opened his eyes due to a shadow looming over the bed. It was Anchan, looking renewed. The baby was able to survive thanks to him. He found an antidote in time. Anchan was moved and began to cry, admitted that the baby was very dear to him. Anchan was very scared and afraid that something bad would happen to his sister. He had a hunch about what the future held for the clan, and Haran promised him that this time his brother's fears would not come true. The girl curled up next to her brother and wiped his tears before they did. She thought her own appearance disgusted her brother, but if she was in trouble, he always came to her aid in her past life due to a misunderstanding with Zoe. So Tan Yujeon, the head of the Tan clan, wanted to poison Heran, but Achun prevented it from happening. When the family was attacked, he was the first to come to his sister. Just a small touch from Heran made Achun laugh and calm down. There, Achun, the son of the leader of the black cult, Jiren's touch would mean nothing since he didn't consider her part of the family. But now everything was different. Achan loved the baby. Achan promised to take care of anyone who hurt his little sister. So was worried about the health of Jaren and broke down crying when she saw the happy baby. Achan continued watching over his sister and did not allow suspicious people to approach her. There was a clan meeting scheduled for today, and Soso announced with a smile that the girl would have a special guest. It was the young master. Choi Namgung greeted the girl with a warm smile. Since the night the baby was poisoned, Choi had changed a lot and now openly showed his love for his sister. Meanwhile, Achun Namgong entered the hall and introduced his younger sister and older brother. To the stranger, he was the head of the Tang clan of Sichuan Tanhoy and the king of poisons. Approached Choi and little Hiran with a request to examine them. He checked the chief's pulse and found symptoms of poisoning from the cursed blood poison. The elders were horrified by the news and had doubts, but Tang Hon remained firm. Choi said the disturbances were caused by the news of the emergence of a clan that for a long time had been considered harmful and destroyed. The elders were worried. Aaron suspected that the elders were involved in the poisoning. Choi specifically brought in an outside expert to confirm his suspicions about the culprits. He holds the title of family head. But many in the clan disagree with this, so he can use the influence of the king of poison, an independent expert. The elders confirmed that the previous elders had committed a terrible act. The head of the Tang clan of Sichuan admitted that the poisoning was caused by the cursed blood poison. If the elders had acted differently, they would have been considered accomplices. According to the precepts of the Murim alliance, the elders would be executed by special forces, and their desire to please the Namgong clan meant that the alliance was not so strong. Achun hugged the baby closer to him when Tan Hoen called her a lovely girl. Tan Young asked if the girl would attend the banquet, and Achan coughed demonstratively. The leader thoughtfully dropped that he would be delighted to meet Achan and the girl that night. A subject called the chief and informed him that the young master Yu Hong had disappeared. The worried head of the Tang clan warned Choi and went to look for the young master, Achon watched him cautiously holding the baby in his arms. The young Lord Yugyom was smiling and lively, found entertainment on the estate Namgung and a new friend, the young man. Kangwoo Namgung befriended Yugyom from the Tang clan. Meanwhile, disputes were occurring among the elders on the estate. The elder Chingan was worried that the abandonment of their families by two elders would become a problem if the Consul Supreme found out. The elder Chol Jotai admitted that it was not them who used the cursed blood potion to poison a Chol. If the Murim alliance intervened, suspicions might not fall on the clan leader but on the elders. The elder Gokchol admitted they were cornered. The elders began to argue about who would benefit from replacing the poison. Suspicions fell on the clan leader Namgung. The elders speculated whether Choi Namgung could have used the deadly poison of a destroyed cult long ago on his own brother to achieve his goal. One of the elders could have been a traitor. The elders decided to use the nanny to find the traitor. The elder Gog Chul said the plan to crush the Namgung clan lasted 10 years and the cursed blood potion interrupted it. The elder Gokchul was the one who destroyed the herb cult. Now the elders had to cover their tracks and prepare for a possible escape. The girl in her brother's arms was outraged by his arrival at the meeting. Charming dances, maidens with beautiful dresses, an abundance of delicious food on the tables, and the curious Lord Young Hong who never left Achon and the baby's side in the future. Young Hong will receive the title of Poisonous Dragon. But for now, he was a sweet boy who wanted to play with little Jiran. He was talkative and actively tried to attract the girl's attention. Jung Hong had been planting microphones on Namgung, poisoning drinks and arriving late to meetings, and that day he was behaving exactly the same way. Aaron drove him away, expecting more teasing. John Han saw Jiran as a lonely person and sympathized with her, so he showed his attention through teasing. He was worried that Aaron would feel disgusted by his sincere sympathy. Heron knew that John Jun was deliberately trying to get her attention, and that trait irritated her a lot. His behavior reminded Aaron of her childhood. She also tried to attract her family's attention in every possible way. The young John Hun could not accept the fact that the little girl did not pay attention to him. He thought she hated him because he was the heir of the Poison clan. The young John Hun brought unwanted sad memories to the little girl. In the past, he tried with the same desperation to earn his family's love. John Hun, with a cheerful smile, promised to return and pay attention to the baby again. The leader called Achon. The girl noticed that there were no visible leaders of other clans nearby. Due to a strange potion, the meeting started earlier than expected on Chon. He started looking for someone to leave his little sister with. Soren appeared with a smile and a warm greeting. Soren volunteered to hold his little sister while Anchon talked with the clan leader. Soren admitted that he missed his baby. Soren didn't beat around the bush and told the little one why he hadn't been able to visit her for so long. The clan chief invited Soren to his house. The girl found it strange that the leader called Achon separately without Jiran. Both were poison, and it made no sense to separate them. The girl got agitated when she and her sister were taken in the other direction. Soren promised to protect his baby. Both sister and brother knew about the danger but exposed themselves to it knowingly. The girl heard that the clan chief needed her. The girl thought they wanted to kill or even kidnap her and began to wonder why the chief needed her and her sister Haran. She burst into tears in her sister's arms to get her attention. The servant was worried about the crying of the baby and threatened to calm the child to avoid provoking the chief. The servant drew his sword to attack Soren, but the young stranger stopped his strike. The two fighters unleashed the strength and power of their swords to strike each other. The stranger confidently took the blow, protecting Soren and the baby. He took the sword from the attacking servant's hands. The girl saw a piece of cloth cut with an emblem fly over her. She caught the piece of cloth in her palm with a joyful smile. Holding the baby in her arms, Soren barely dodged the flying dagger. The stranger urged Soren to run and promised to stop the servant. Soren, hugging the baby, ran. It was a foiled kidnapping, and Soren was a much more valuable hostage. Since she was the recognized daughter of the family Namgung, unlike little Heran, Heran was sure that the traitors knew the exact time of the meeting and knew the Namgung estate well. This was the work of someone from the Namgung clan. Soren and Heran managed to escape the estate. Soren was injured in the shoulder. Behind Soren appeared a servant with a dagger. He took the sisters to an unknown place in the forest. Soren stated that the place was too dusty for the baby, who was already frequently ill. When the man left, Soren began to look around the room. The little hands of someone grabbed the window frame. It was the young Young-hoon. He looked at the room with interest and concern and exclaimed joyfully when he saw the baby was safe. Namgung Kanggu appeared behind him. Soren exclaimed indignantly when she saw her brother, and the young Master Kambu ignored his sister's concerns, and a fight was brewing between them. The servant grabbed Jung Hong and Kangwu by the neck and threw them toward Soren, and Heron ordered to seal the windows so the prisoners couldn't escape. John Hun immediately asked the baby if she was okay. Soren shared that they were caught by bad people and that she would definitely protect her little sister. Jong Kun promised that he would also protect the baby. Meanwhile, Kambu was already preparing a plan for revenge against his attackers. He was an expert in punishment and he didn't want to let the offenders go so easily. Kambu was not going to stay still and was preparing to leave. Soren helped Kampu climb onto his shoulders and looked out the window, but instead of going out the window, Kampu started hitting the boards. He was able to break through the barriers because he had been training and studying martial arts. For a long time, Jong-hun looked at Kanggu with admiration and asked if Kanggu had escaped before. Instead of answering, Kangoo crawled between the boards toward freedom. Kangoo decided that the baby had to get out first. Otherwise, the kidnappers would come back and execute everyone. Soren doubted that Kampu could safely deliver his sister to their older brothers. Kampu reasoned that it would be easier for his sister to escape when there were no hostages. Soren trusted Kampu and made a cone with his clothes to deceive the criminals. Kangoo, with Junior and Jaran in his arms, began to wait. Soren heard footsteps and was startled, hugging the bundle of clothes tighter. As if to protect it, the nanny appeared in the doorway. Soren was surprised they had no right to let the nanny out. Without the family council's permission, the nanny confirmed Soren's suspicions about the bribe. Otherwise, she could not have been released from prison. The irritated nanny murmured that in the consanguinity system, not everyone has the Namgung surname and is loyal to the leader. They have their own ambitions and goals and want to overthrow the leader and gain power. The nanny planned to feed the baby poison and then give the antidote to manipulate the family. Soren laughed and told the nanny to go to hell. The threat to his sister's life forced Soren to pull himself together and defend his family. The blame for poisoning Namgung Wunchon with the cursed blood potion fell on the Peng clan, and the Peng leader Inhook was outraged. The main ingredient of the cursed blood potion was an extremely rare herb that was kept in the Peng clan. Reasoned the leader of the Seagull clan, the elder Chojutai confirmed that the ingredient was brought through the Seagull clan's trade routes. The leader of the Moen Hengan clan doubted that the secret herb cult recipes destroyed would not have been found anywhere. The leader of the Namgung clan held a council without notifying the Muram alliance. Hengan wanted to find out their motives. He couldn't believe that the Namgung brothers were so reckless as to face the other clans alone. The Namgung did not notify the Muram alliance because they trusted the centuries-old ties between the great clans and had no intention of turning the heads into enemies. The Namgung family only wanted to find those involved and bring them to justice. They did not want a war between clans. The blame for the poisoning with the potion fell on all the clans, so the Namgung family could be the subject of mockery and humiliation if the accusation affected the honor of the families. When Namgung Sogwa decided to take in 5 children whose mothers she didn't even know, everyone thought it was the end of the Namgung clan. But Choi Namgung grew up quickly, and even under pressure from other clans, he didn't give up and kept the Namgung clan's head held high. He had no intention of making public the poisoning incident. Choi proposed that the families responsible for the incident pay compensation and resolve the conflict peacefully. Meanwhile, Kangwoo fled the forest with the baby, and Yuhyun they hid in a building next to the palace to escape their pursuers. The girl anxiously grabbed Kanwa by the neck and pulled him toward her. Kangwoo handed the baby to Jonghun and told him to hide while he distracted the pursuers. The girl was worried. What was happening reminded her of her last moments with her family from the past. The field was covered in bloody bruises, but she never complained of pain or discomfort. She confidently gave instructions to Young Hong so he could protect young Jaran. The image of Kangwoo reminded Jaran of her adult self. She asked Jaran to run. Kangwoo shouted that the clan hadn't taught Jaran fighting techniques. They treated her like trash and that she shouldn't cling to her family and run away. The pursuers caught up with them and Kangwoo sent Jaran to run away. Kangwoo promised to return and lied. Finally asked Haran to live no matter how hard it was for her now she was younger, and Haran couldn't let herself die recklessly. Kampu touched his sister's hand and said again that he would return. Jonghun ran toward the estate holding the baby and calming her. He said he would return Garan to her older brothers and Kangwoo. One of the pursuers noticed Jonghun and the baby and spat a poisoned silver needle at Aran. She felt she was losing her loved ones again, and that her own death was approaching. Jonghun reached out and protected the baby from the needle poisoned. He hugged the baby and smiled reassuringly. Jonghun called the guards and asked where his grandfather was. He shouted that they were trying to kidnap the baby. The guards were horrified. One of the guards took Jonghun and the baby before the head of the Choi clan. The head of the Tang clan was horrified just like Choi. They saw their young ones injured. The young Hong reported that the baby was about to be kidnapped and locked in a barn with Sorin. The girl tried to warn her older brother her sister was still in danger. Shika whispered to the girl that they had already sent a shadow squad to look for Sorin Aran. She was worried because she couldn't warn anyone since she still couldn't speak, she couldn't walk and couldn't escape. Jonghun said Kangwoo drove off the pursuers, but he and the baby were hit with poison needles. Yonghun was able to protect the baby because he was immune to the poison and caught the poison needle. The head of the Tang clan was angry because his grandson, Chief Tang, had been attacked and injured. Said he would help the Namgung clan carry out a cleanup and find everyone involved in the disaster. Choi concluded the clan meeting and postponed the second one until the next day. Choi sent the Dragon Spear squad to look for Gangu and check the dungeon where the nanny was. And the former elder Sechun was surprised. Normally his older brother was merciful to enemies and did not order them killed when the elders stopped rejecting any method. It no longer made sense to fight them with traditional methods. Choi couldn't protect his sister that way. Namgung Choi, who valued integrity above all, changed quickly when it came to his sister. Namgung's hope grew that Choi would not abandon her in the future, even if she couldn't learn martial arts. Kanbu and Soren returned to the estate. They were safe, but the maid tried to send the young Kanbu to the medical room. The estate fell into its usual chaos. From the moment the family gathered, Kanbu broke down crying when he was forbidden to approach and look at his sister. The Kampu was covered in bruises he didn't have when he went to distract his pursuers. Aran decided to pay the debt and gave the hidden garment with the emblem. The family leaned over the emblem surprised. Thanks to the intense interrogation that Soren carried out on the nanny, the circle of suspects became clear. the Tang clan, lent a hand enraged by the attack on the heir, so the situation was resolved quickly and quietly. But no one in the family could recognize the emblem. Director Tang passed by the medical building and asked about the baby's health. He himself came to visit his grandson and decided it would be a great idea that Aran and his grandson meet again. Achon refused, citing health problems, and the head of the Tang clan commented that he hoped to see them at future meetings of the great clans. Achon stopped the leader to ask him a question. The incident during the meeting affected the Tang clan. The leader could have demanded any compensation, but they asked for nothing. Achon wanted to know why the head of the Tang clan was so loyal to the Namgong family. The chief admitted that his clan owed a lot to the father of the Namgong family, and that he was simply paying his debt. The face of the clan leader had the same sad expression as Junhong's. In the past, with him, it was buried forever. Yunjong had already recovered and was happy to see his grandfather and baby Hirai. In the past, Hirai did not attend Yujin's funeral, and this time she decided to give the boy a chance. She smiled warmly at him. Yunjong looked at the baby joyfully, said he wanted a little sister like her. Junhong already had one over one like Zoe, but he wanted a beauty like Hiran. Upon hearing the young master's words, Achul said that the Namgong clan does not give their children to anyone and got angry. The head of the Tang clan defended his grandson and said he was considerate. Loving and adored children, Achon gave in and handed the baby to young Jun. Jun sat happily with the little one. Heiran protected her dream. Junhan noticed that the baby smelled of loneliness just like him. He had a grandfather, an aunt and uncle, and one over one. Zoe, but he still felt lonely. He admitted that he didn't want the baby to experience the same feelings, and promised to be there for her. The girl laughed and hugged Junhan. She agreed to see the young master, so he wouldn't feel lonely. The young gentleman refused to go home. The grandfather didn't understand what the problem was with the family. Namgong watched in amazement as Junhan became hysterical and kept repeating that he had promised the girl. To protect her, the grandfather grabbed the little rascal. Angry at his stubbornness, the young gentleman admitted that he liked the baby very much and that he wanted to stay with her forever, but the grandfather insisted and ordered the carriage to be prepared. Junhan called the girl and asked her not to forget him, but it was Jaren who didn't want Junhan to forget. Her clan meetings were held every 4 years, and by the next one, Heron would no longer be considered part of the Namgong family. He was outraged because they hadn't invited him to say goodbye to the young master of the Tang clan. Choi didn't let his younger brother say goodbye. To avoid causing chaos again, having gathered the whole family, Choi announced that the torn emblem belonged to a warrior under the command of the Council of Elders. The Council of Elders was made up of those who had repeatedly proven their loyalty to the Namgong family and had excellent combat training. The Council has access to scroll records of secret martial arts with which they develop and protect the secret techniques of the Namgong clan. Of the 12 elders, 3 turned out to be traitors. But the investigation stalled, so the leader decided to intervene personally, sensing a threat. Choi said that for the Namgong family, protecting the descendants comes before tradition. The children of the clan are the top priority. Choi and Soren immediately sent a Chun to toughen up in combat trials and investigate the traitors, while the elders took care of the baby Choi, and a Chun agreed to take care of their sister together. But Soren was against it. Soren was busy handling the accounting of a Chon, and all the administration was in a state of reorganization. Soren was ready to work and take care of the baby. Achon supported his sister's idea and also volunteered to work and take care of his little sister. The baby always fell asleep quickly in their arms. Soren immediately embarrassed his brother, saying he had been asking the maids how to properly rock the baby. Kampu asked to be handed the baby. He had a lot of free time. The elders were not enthusiastic about the idea. Uncho suggested giving the baby the right to choose her own nurse. Soren was outraged. It was an unfair decision, because Achon spent a lot of time with Heron. Little children don't do much, so someone who wouldn't bother her too much would be suitable for the little one. A week later, the baby had to choose who would take care of her. A true war broke out. The family brought toys embroidered with stones and decorations and sheets made of the purest silk, even antidotes that can neutralize any poison. The girl was delighted with the attention. As a result, instead of a competition for the girl's attention, everything turned into a race in which everyone wanted to give their little sister more gifts than the others, and so on. Continued spending time with the happy girl and told her the latest gossip about the estate. The young Kangoo broke several expensive swords, tore silk curtains, and as punishment his allowance was cut again. It turned out he even had to sell his own things to be able to bring gifts to the baby. That's why after the family gathering, Namgong Choi insisted on a sword fight, and then scolded Kangoo. Long ago, Namgong had never been able to see a training fight with the unlimited heaven sword technique. When Namgong saw his brothers, his heart leapt with joy. Namgong's fighting style, Kangwoo's, was sharper and more powerful than his sister's, and Namgong Choi's movements were refined and precise. They observed the unlimited heaven sword technique for the first time. When they turn 5 years old, they will be able to learn the same technique. But Aaron knew that wouldn't happen. They would never give her a sword nor teach her powerful techniques. Namgong wanted to hold a sword in her hands. At least once more, she clasped her chubby, childish hands in frustration. The next morning, Kanba visited the baby with a smile. Kanbu shared that he had brought a gift for the girl. It was a damn doll, all ragged with empty eyes. The girl was scared and then looked closely at the toy. The doll was very well cared for. It was patched, it smelled good, and even had a name embroidered. Kanbu was eagerly waiting for the baby's reaction to the gift. Namgong cuddled next to the toy with a smile and squealed with satisfaction, wanting to make her brother Kangoo happy, admitted that this toy was given to him by his mother. The head of the Namgong clan, according to Kangoo, the doll was meant to ward off nightmares and protect the baby Kangoo. Didn't have money to buy the girl a better toy, but said the doll was very dear to him, so he gave it to his little sister. Kanbu watched with a smile as the girl hugged her favorite toy at night. Choi and Wunchun found a cute photo in the baby's room. Haran and Kangoo fell asleep sweetly together. The toy the baby was hugging scared Wunchun. Kanbu appreciated the toy, but now gave it to someone else, which showed his strong affection for his little sister. Choi gently touched the baby's hair and thought that the former head of the Namgong family, Namgong Sogwan, would be pleased to see how much she had grown. It was the greatest misfortune of the Straight Path cult, an exile whose way back was closed. Choi could not forget the day the exile appeared at the threshold of the Namgong clan refuge in the middle of a furious storm. Choi saw many burning like flames. Driven by a goal only, they knew those who disappear after achieving their goal without leaving a trace. Choi believed that Namgong So-wan would end his life exactly like that upon appearing on the threshold. So Wan immediately asked Choi So's name. Wan admitted that he had been looking for Choi for a long time, so Wan was looking for Choi to return to him everything that rightfully belonged to him as the future leader. Choi refused to follow the previous leader without Soren. Soren and Choi's mothers died on the same day, leaving the children alone and unable to live long. One without the other. Choi's instincts screamed at him not to let this opportunity pass. But he couldn't leave without Soren. After thinking about it a little, Sogwan agreed to take care of the two children. The children had to follow Sogwan's legend about the twins and decide which one would be older. The clan people couldn't believe that Choi and Soren were the children of the previous leader, but they couldn't deny the resemblance outwardly between Choi and the former leader in his youth. So one trusted that everything would go well. Once the clan people saw Choi, they couldn't believe how much he resembled the previous leader. Sogwan admitted that people don't talk about their pathetic and greedy father, but about their brother, whom Choi resembles in appearance. Sogwan's brother was Choi's father, and he was the one who initially was supposed to become the clan leader. So Wan was uncomfortable talking about the past. The children noticed it. From the moment his voice changed, filling with hatred, resentment, and rage, the children didn't ask unnecessary questions because it didn't matter. A couple of years later, the children acquired a younger brother who strongly smelled of medicinal herbs, and a few years later, the second youngest, who writhed in my arms and screamed like an angry cat. So Wan wanted Chu to take power after his death, and for his brothers and sister to become direct descendants of the Namgong clan. The leader was indifferent to the clan's fate. The future heirs could destroy it or save it. He trusted them completely. Everything that happens to the clan after death will be the children's responsibility. So Wan's eyes reflected a soul that had been burned to the ground, as if he was ready to easily part from life at any moment the next time. So Wan brought his son and named the baby Namgong Haran. Until that moment, Choi didn't know that So Wan could smile so tenderly. Thus, the baby became the son of the Namgong clan. So Wan, he hoped that the clan name Namgong would not become a cage for the children, and if it did, they would be willing to get rid of it and live not for the good of the clan, but for the good of themselves. So Wan hoped that the elders had the strength to take care of the baby. Choi knew they would never become part of the Namgong clan, but So Wan called them brothers of his own daughter. The children were more like strangers, and were not especially eager to become relatives, but they became brothers and sisters of the son of Sogwan Namgong Haran. Little by little, bonds began to develop among the children. Now they were willing to lend each other a shoulder and run to help at any moment. Thus Namgong Sogwan, who gave the children their name, left a small treasure for the Namgong family. The next night, Choi and Wunchun took care of the baby sleeping in their bedroom. A threatening shadow of a stranger loomed over the baby's crib. It turned out to be Soren, who had abrasions on his face. Choi told him that his sister's nanny and the elders who were held in the underground prison had committed suicide. Soren discovered something else. The criminals did not commit suicide. They were murdered. When Soren took on the task of investigating the incident, he encountered a group of hitmen who were carrying out a witness cleanup. There weren't many, but they were strong. Soren barely escaped with his life. Soren suspected that the mercenaries were using a martial arts style that emitted a red aura. It was a blood cult, the main instigator of the war that broke out 10 years ago. At that time, many righteous clans joined forces to destroy the leader of the blood cult. However, many clan leaders and heirs fell on the battlefield, which caused the clan's influence to weaken. Without conclusive evidence, rumors about the involvement of a blood cult could lead to unnecessary chaos, which would put the Namgong family in a difficult position. Due to the war with the blood cult, the Namgong family weakened more than others, and in its current state was not prepared to withstand such a threat from outside. It was decided to keep a low profile for 10 years, and during this time, restore the former greatness of the Namgong family. After Kangwoo gave the baby a doll, all other family members agreed to take turns caring for the little sister. Those were quiet and peaceful days filled with a calm routine. But the girl was bored. But the girl had her dear chatterbox, Soso, always ready to share the latest gossip. But due to her serious mood, Choi Soso was afraid to say an unnecessary word she couldn't afford to simply talk to the child while the director was putting so much effort into his work. Thus, the girl learned to get up without help and entertained herself reading the council reports. They contained a lot of interesting information, from coverage of politics in Anhui province to what was happening in the Murom alliance. The girl found a note from the Red Jade Merchants Guild requesting payment for the swords and agreeing to use a promissory note. Most of the older conspirators have already been defeated, but in the past, The Namgong clan could not pay for the weapons due to the consequences of corruption. The Red Jade Merchants Guild accepted promissory notes without problems, but when the Namgong family was in financial crisis, the blood cult took over the debt collection. If the debt could not be paid immediately, the cult was willing to take one of the clan's businesses. In exchange, the Guild of Red Jade colluded with the Iron Blood Alliance, betraying the Namgong clan. The alliance immediately began to take over everything the Namgong family had at that moment. Piece by piece, Jiran remembered how the daughter of the Iron Blood Alliance leader Nazarin invited her to the Blue Cloud Pavilion that had been taken from the Namgong family. Nazorin informed Jiran that the pavilion with a luxurious view was handed over to the alliance. By coincidence, Aaron was outraged to see that the promissory note and the subsequent appropriation of others' property by the alliance were described as a happy accident. Aaron was shamed by the daughter of the alliance leader. At that moment, Jiran still did not know that the alliance was connected to the blood cult, and under their instructions, everything left of the Namgong clan was being slowly destroyed now. Heron suspected that the Red Jade Merchant Guild might be involved in the betrayal. Choi was invited by the elder SA, but the older brothers could not leave his little sister alone and called her to accompany him. But Aaron refused. She was more interested in continuing to read the newspapers. The problem was with the documents sent by the guild. So the little girl decided to prevent Choi from stamping them. The girl selflessly ruined the documents, feeling relieved until another document caught her attention. It was a document from the Namgong Merchant Guild. Wonchun had mentioned in Jiran's past life. They wrote that they had heard about the search for a medicine supplier. After the recent infamous embarrassing incident, their intention was to help the family to further strengthen the ties between the Golden Libra and the Namgong clan amid the chaos reigning among the merchant guilds. When each wanted to join the blood cult, only the Golden Libra remained loyal to the Namgong clan. It is one of the 3 largest merchant guilds, so it has been able to stay true to the right path. In the newspapers, they mentioned the poisoning of Anchon, and seemed to affirm that they were aware of all the family's affairs and willing to form an alliance. Jiran did not like this attitude. Choi appeared behind her and asked why she had made such a fuss. In Choi's eyes, his sister was a smart girl. She clearly showed what she liked and what she didn't, and it was the first time she had done something like that. There must be a reason for this. My sister did nothing without a reason. Choi picked up his sister and asked her that next time to tell him not to get her hands dirty. Heron nodded in agreement, and Choi smiled. The girl promised to find another way to inform her brother about the danger in the afternoon. Choi met with the council leader at the estate park. Shinya said she was ready to give a report. He was injured. During one of the battles, the enemy used a curious skill, and when Jinchul looked at it, he couldn't help but remember the old war times. Before becoming the head of the council, he led the Celestial Lightning Squad and was involved in dark deeds as part of it. This led Choi to the conclusion that those hiding in the southern palace were the blood cult. They fought just as dirty by sending spies everywhere to fill clans and cults with their people. After this, they used the victims at their whim and destroyed them when they became useless. These were Shinchul's words. He was worried that they were not enough for the Morim alliance. But Choi decided to tell everything. The Namgong clan had been raising snakes under their protection for almost 30 years, and there was no guarantee that the Morim alliance would escape the same fate. Choi urged the leader to side with the Namgong clan. Chinchul fulfilled the request to spy because he understood the importance of what was happening, but he refused to side with the clan. The council must remain neutral. The children of the Namgong family were in danger, and knowing it and not intervening could make Chinchul responsible for the consequences. Choi remembered the pact made with him when he became head of the Namgong clan. According to the oath, the council is obliged to follow Namgong's orders unless they cause potential harm to the clan. The council would have to follow the oath regardless of the principle of neutrality the document bore. The signatures of all the heads of the great clans. If the council leader takes over this part of the work, Achan could focus on other things to develop a cover. This would allow Choi to spend more time with his little sister. Choi counted on Chief Park's help. The leader reasoned that he should have refused to avoid being stuck on the estate for 4 years. Fulfilling the Namgong leader's orders beside him sat little Heroine, now an adult. She was 5 years old. She complained about her family's overprotection, and the boy who had been sending her letters for several years, asking about her health and mood, was the young master of the Tang clan. Aaron learned to write and decided to reply, but the letter disappeared along with the envelope. Then Kambu came and asked me to write a letter so he could help find what had disappeared. Aaron knew he was the one who had hidden the letter and was just teasing her. Then the other brothers and sisters appeared, who also wanted personal letters from the girl. The girl rewrote the letter again and immediately ordered it to be sent to the Tang clan. Jinchul said the girl could have written to the younger one and everything would have been resolved smoothly, but Jaren knew then her family would have felt offended too. Jaren was worried her family was overprotective of her. Despite their busy schedules, the older brother didn't eat without the baby. Soren couldn't visit his sister because of work. The second brother was sick but still took on new challenges. The girl was worried because her brothers and sister could become seriously ill due to their work. Jinchul thought that Jaran was the youngest and a spoiled girl, but now he saw how she cared for her elders. Her family was so immersed in their work that the girl went every day to see the old man. So talked about internal family matters, so the girl needed someone who had news about the outside world, and old Jinchul was perfect. Aran didn't know which organization he was associated with, nor what he did, but he had many contacts, so he was very useful. It was worth pressing him a little, and Jinchul would immediately tell her everything. The girl was distracted from her thoughts by Kambu. He was looking for the girl to show her something important. It was a kangu tree. He climbed to the top and called Jaren to follow him. The baby turned to leave, but Kambu lifted her in his arms. Along with the baby, Kambu climbed a tree where he found a house hidden among the treetops. It offered a beautiful view of the lake, and the girl approached to get a better look. Kambu carefully hugged the girl protectively. He didn't test the strength of the small balcony and was worried that his little sister could get hurt. The baby started to laugh, and Kambu blushed, embarrassed by his worry. He sat next to his little sister and asked her how she felt. He knew that when Aaron was sad, she sat next to the toy box and sorted the toys. The girl's birthday was approaching, and Kambu asked her with a smile to relax. After her birthday, the girl was expected to learn how to handle a sword. The girl was worried she wouldn't master the sword technique. Kambu couldn't understand his sister's worry, since all the clan members knew how to handle weapons. If Aaron had told her older brother something like that, he would have assured her that her worries were unfounded and that she could do anything. The brother and sister said the same and encouraged the girl, but she needed Campbell's opinion, who lived life to the fullest and could give her an honest answer. He said his sister shouldn't worry. Martial arts won't make her someone else. She will still be herself. Kang Wu promised he would always be there to protect his little sister even without martial arts. Hyo Ran would still be herself. She was never just a demon, a sword that wanted nothing more than to fight. The girl was still worried about the old man's words about the problems the Red Jade Guild was bringing to the clan. She knew someone who could help her without facing the situation, but she wasn't sure of the method. Now she was experiencing life differently. Aaron couldn't just go back to the documents now that she had a security guard who was getting on her nerves. She was so right that she didn't let Jaran go anywhere. For fear she might cause a real disaster, the young guard couldn't allow the girl to get hurt or be in danger. Since he became a guard, spent all her free time with the baby, and was able to learn what kind of person Namgong Heron was. The baby was the youngest member of the Namgong family, surrounded by care and prosperity. The young guard couldn't understand why. Haran acted as if there was nothing left in her soul. She was so selfless. Haran entered her older brother's room and didn't find him in his place behind her. The vase suddenly started to shake. The vase could have been shaking due to a draft or because Brother Unchan had started taking poison again. The girl took the vase to take a look, but then Unchan entered the room. The girl shuddered and dropped the golden vase. Unchan grabbed her by the shoulder and turned her toward him. He said he didn't teach Haran to take other people's things whenever she wanted. Unchan's look scared Namgong. Her brother looked at her the same way as in her past life, with disgust in the darkness of her room. Namgong made sure her brother had behaved that way because he was afraid. Usually her brother never got angry and was affectionate. Normally, he would have immediately run to Jaren's side to make sure she wasn't hurt. Namgong's brother's reaction made her lose her composure, and she asked why he was angry over a trivial matter. She should have apologized to her brother for her outburst, but the words got stuck in her throat. The guard, just like the maid Soso, was worried about Namgong's condition. He advised Haran to talk to the second young master. The baby still wasn't ready to speak. She wasn't afraid of his anger and believed that Unchan would never raise his voice at her. Then the disappointment from her brother's shout hit Namgong so hard that she couldn't hold back her tears. She couldn't remember when she started depending on and trusting Unchan so much. The girl asked the guard if he would stay by her side if she failed to learn martial arts, failed in her studies, and became useless. Chuseokan said that a person's dignity is not determined by their success. He advised Namgong to go to her loved ones and tell them everything. Namgong said she was hungry. Sekun, he said with a smile that he would convey the little one's wish. So when the guard left, Namgong thought she had started her life from scratch during these 4 years. She thought this time everything would be different, but she couldn't forget the look Unchan gave her. Namgong wondered how Unchan would react. When on her 5th birthday everyone found out again that the girl was unable to learn martial arts, would he get angry or start to despise the baby? A deep fear tormented the girl. She trembled with anxiety but kept convincing herself that everything would be fine. After a while, this day finally came. Every year these banquets were filled with guests, and everyone stopped what they were doing to congratulate the little one. Just when she had already gotten used to the comfort, the day came that would end her peaceful life. Choi asked where the baby wanted to sit. Soren and Unchan sat next to each other and waited for her answer. The girl hid behind Choi and told her she should stay away from her brother Unchan. Choi thanked solemnly the guests for their presence at the celebration. On the occasion of her sister's birthday, everyone rushed to congratulate the little girl and tell her how much the young girl had grown. Erin still felt uncomfortable seeing her brother. The girl hadn't seen her sister in a long time either. She didn't answer her letters nor visit her. Even Namgong Kanggu was unusually calm today. Erin couldn't understand why her younger brother was so tense. Meanwhile, the floor was given to the head of the Namgong clan council and the council delegation. They brought many gifts for the young girl and hoped she would like them. To the girl, the chief was just a grandfather, not the council president. The girl realized that the chiefs she complained about were her older brothers. The guests asked the girl to come forward. The moment Aaron had feared most had arrived: recognition and doubt, admiration and joy. Aaron was filled with a sea of emotions as they led her to the center of the hall to learn martial arts. It was necessary to control internal energy. The master stood behind Heron and told her he would transmit his momentum, and asked her to concentrate and remember the flow of energy passing through her internal points. Heron felt a warmth inside her, a familiar energy flowing through her. Suddenly the baby started coughing up blood. The master said that Aran would not be able to master martial arts. All her internal meridian points were blocked, making it impossible to control internal energy through them. Shouts were heard from all sides. Was it really possible? That a direct descendant of the Namgung family was unable to practice martial arts? Jaran couldn't understand why she thought this time would be different. Like in the past, these words amounted to a death sentence. The banquet hall meant for celebration and joy was filled with cries of surprise and protest. Jaran couldn't see the expressions on her family's faces, but she remembered very well what would happen in the next minute. Amid loud screams, Heron ran out of the hall. The guests continued whispering. The elder O couldn't believe that a direct descendant of the Namgung clan was not capable of learning martial arts. The council chief interrupted Elder O's shouts. Elder O lost his temper, since the council leader was responsible for teaching martial arts, and blamed the entire council. With a smile, Anshan asked if the elder really believed that untalented members of the clan were no longer considered descendants of the Namgung clan. Soren said threateningly that the newly appointed elder was very worried about the baby. No, but he should be worried about himself. Kangwoo asked what right the elder had to judge who was worthy to be part of the clan and who was not. He broke his staff and was outraged no one could trample his little sister in the mud during the festival. But Choi gently interrupted Kangwoo's outrage. The guests kept insisting that they were Namgung. Now he would lose the clan's respect. Choi understood that those around him thought his affection for his sister would weaken due to his inability to learn martial arts. For Choi it was funny. He reached out for his sword. The guests tensed as Choi calmly scolded them. For their obscene comments about his sister, they had 5 days to apologize to his sister while the baby cried in her room. Her brothers and sister were willing to sacrifice their honor and destroy their relationship with the clan. Kampu was outraged. He couldn't understand why his brothers and sister didn't publicly defend their younger sister. Soren accused Kanva of exactly the same inaction. The usual dispute arose between Kampu and Soren. Soren asked Choi why he didn't intervene. Choi rubbed his neck embarrassed and admitted he was lost. Chun, he admitted he was worried that his words would make the situation worse. Soren didn't defend his sister because he first wanted to reprimand the guests. Soren spent entire days in the infirmary smelling of blood, a scent he tried to hide with perfume. Choi realized that his sister, despite his request, kept doing night patrols. The family decided to first calm their sister. Instead of finding out who was right, Kampo enthusiastically reminded him that today was their sister's birthday and suggested showering her with gifts and throwing a party that would make her forget all her worries. So entered the room and asked if the baby had returned. So assumed something bad had happened to the baby. Hara looked around her old room, empty and abandoned. Just as it had been in her past life this time, all her relatives also turned their backs on the little one. Nothing changed. She was worried that So and Second would stop respecting her. Erin knew this would happen. She did her best to accept the outcome, but still felt hurt by the indifference of her brothers and sister. The girl was upset. The family said she was their favorite, and that they would always be there for her. Namgong felt very hurt by Kanggu. He promised to always be by her side. Erin promised herself that she wouldn't build castles in the air, and made the same mistake again. The door creaked open. It was a wolf. It began circling the baby. The wolf sniffed the frightened Heron and then jumped on her and began gently rubbing its nose against her cheek. The wolf's fur was all dirty, and Erin thought it had been abandoned just like her. She hugged the wolf pup and said that long ago she fought the blood cult and heard something in the apostate cults. The Namgong clan was considered the easiest victim. This was confirmed when they managed to falsely accuse Namgong Heron of poisoning. The member of the blood cult said that no one would defend Jaran, so the Iron Blood Alliance was able to crush the Namgong clan. When Aran heard these words, he felt an unbearable feeling of guilt. The expectations of others broken made her a pariah in the Namgong family, became the weakest point of the clan. What destroyed him? Namgong asked the wolf to stay and live with her. She was sure she would be abandoned again, and it would cause her family's death. Namgong waited until the end not to have to sell anything, so she kept things that were dear to her full of memories in a drawer. Haran wanted her family to always be united. The feeling of loneliness and betrayal made the baby cry even after her reincarnation. Her dream remained unfulfilled. Suddenly they called her, and Aran turned around with tears in her eyes. Soren ran into the room in tears. Soren felt guilty and worried because the baby had escaped. Due to her family's indifference, Soren admitted she avoided Haran because she was injured during the last raid and didn't want to worry the baby. Soren hugged Haran and called her most precious treasure. The girl burst into tears because Soren hadn't responded to her letters for a long time and kept her distance. Kanva witnessed a touching scene. Immediately took the baby in her arms and worried that Soren had hurt her. The girl said through tears that her older sister was not to blame. Kambo hugged the baby to calm her. Jaran couldn't resist and admitted she was worried. Because Kango hadn't even smiled at her that night, Kambo was embarrassed because the girl almost fell from the tree due to his carelessness. Kango was worried that Jaran would get into trouble again if he was nearby. Ancho entered the bedroom, admitted he was beside himself, and terribly regretted his crisis. He thought he should have calmly explained to the girl what was happening instead of yelling at her over trivial things. Anchan promised never to scold the baby again. The girl hugged Anchan and forgave him. The family admitted that there was nothing wrong with Jaran's lack of talent for martial arts. If she had the desire to learn Choi, she would be willing to turn the world upside down to help the little girl. Choi encouraged Jaran not to be afraid of making mistakes and stumbling, promised to always be by her little sister's side. The family bonds among the family only grew stronger at this moment. Suddenly the girl remembered her new friend. The wolf looked at the baby with disappointment and complained. Aran looked at her older brother with hope. She asked to take the wolf with her and give him shelter. Kangoo and Choi looked at Heron with confusion. Kampu moved the dog away from the baby, worried that it was infested with fleas. It turned out the dog had a collar. It had the name Gerain Namgong. She looked at her brother in disbelief when he said the name. Choi admitted the dog was his birthday gift. For his younger sister, the family members looked at their older brother with surprise. The dog turned out to be a mystical beast, the snow wolf of Yunnan in the family's eyes. The dog didn't look like a mystical beast. It looked like an ordinary mixed-breed dog. Now the worst days were behind. The girl did not feel abandoned. Her life turned out completely different. The baby could not learn martial arts, which made him the weak point of the Namgong clan. There had always been those who wanted to attack the girl from behind. But in this case she had a plan. She was ready to crush them first. The girl drank tea calmly. In the company of her irreplaceable guardian, suddenly a man burst into the room shouting Jerain was not afraid. Because her brother had built a window with a beautiful view in her room, so it was clear who to let in. And who not to the guard politely asked the man to leave, but he replied that he had waited too long. He was Rio Gallo of the Gallo clan. He was in charge of the Celestial Star Trade Guild, which was controlled by the Namgong clan. He came to apologize for the incident at the banquet. He was from the richest clan, and Namgong thought ahead. How much compensation he could get from him. His assistant brought a large chest. The chest contained many jewels and valuables. Haran said this would not be enough as an apology. Ryugayo did not expect such a response. He insulted Namgong in front of everyone and hurt the girl, her brothers, and her sister with his words. The girl rejected the gift and kicked out the old man. The man from the Gala clan began to boil with rage. Meanwhile, Kambu entered the room. He had just washed the wolf. The wolf and Kambu turned to the old man with indignation. The baby and the guard immediately told Kambu that the representative of the Gallo clan had insulted the baby. Kambu, who got angry easily, was outraged. He was willing to defend his younger sister's honor. Under any circumstances, the status of his opponent did not matter to him. The girl, with a malicious smile, said she would forgive the old man if he could defeat Kanbu. The old man enthusiastically accepted, but he could not defeat the young master Kangu. He was very proud of himself and enjoyed the sight of the defeated old man. The girl enthusiastically prepared to collect the old man's debt. The condition was victory over Kanbu, but the old man lost, which meant he had to pay money. The first price was 50,000 gold coins. The old man offered to make a list of all those who owed an apology to Yeren and in return asked for a reduction in the debt amount. The girl disagreed and asked for a separate list. But the list was well made, and the girl appreciated the efforts of the old Namgong. She asked to name the simplest and narrow-minded among them. The old man continued listing, and Aaron asked if it wouldn't be easier for him to pay with money. The girl offered to complete some of his tasks. To reduce the debt amount, the old man asked if the girl's request was known by the young masters and the head of the Namgong clan. The girl hid her request from her elders but told the old man that they knew everything. The old man agreed to arrange a meeting for the girl with one of the offenders, Yang Yon. The guild leader warned that Yang Yon had a difficult character and could try to harm her, and the girl was nervous before meeting Yang Yon. But everything went well. Ryugakyo was surprised because Yang Yong, who was known for his bad temper, calmly handled the meeting with the girl. Yang Yong admitted that just yesterday he believed a direct descendant of the Namgong family could not help but have talent for martial arts. During the meeting, the girl told him she couldn't learn to fight, but that she valued her clan no less than her brothers and sisters and wished them prosperity. She knew countless ways to lead the Namgong family to success. In response, Yang Yong admitted that he loved the Namgong clan with all his heart and was proud of it. Jeran assured that her love for the clan was no weaker than Yang Yong's love. She asked Yang Yong to prove his love and loyalty to the Namgong clan, to apologize to her and take responsibility for the hurtful words he said. Then the Namgong clan will shine brighter than all the stars in the sky. Jeran's words gave hope to Yang Jong. Choosing Yang Jong as an ally was risky, but Jairan had her own reasons for it. In her past life she was fierce and arrogant, but her loyalty to the clan was unquestionable. She loved the Namgong family so much that they nicknamed her the Namgong clan dog. If Yang Jo takes Rujin's data and does everything necessary, Hirai will be able to get rid of interference within the family. The girl decided it was time to move on to the next part of the plan. Uncle Rujin entered the room and asked the girl again if she had received the family head's consent. Aaron lied to him again. The guard could only sigh deeply and support the young woman's ideas. The girl took the matter seriously and was ready to start getting rid of the traitors of the clan. Therefore, she asked Ryu to bring the head of the Andri branch, the second disciple of the cult of the supplicant's handmaster, the elder Choi Golje. The girl asked Seokhyun and Ryu to leave her alone with the elder. The agreement with the Red Jade Guild failed. They began to thoroughly analyze the details of the documents related to the Golden Libra Guild and the Namgong clan. While spreading rumors, at first they were ignored, but one day the cult of the supplicant's hand sided with the Red Jade and gave weight to all the words and rumors. The girl remembered this when she saw the documents on her sister's desk. The solution to all the problems Grandfather Beck complained about was in Jiran. A member of the cult of the supplicant's hand, Choi Yulge, asked if it was really the girl who had been investigating past matters and had dared to call him there. Aaron wrote to him saying she knew what had happened 10 years ago on the full moon night and urged him to meet with her so everything would remain secret. The girl admitted it was her doing. At first she couldn't believe it. because everything sounded absurd and stupid, but Yolja's reaction showed that the story was true. The drink jar almost fell from the girl's hands. Then the adult, Heran, urged the lord to drink more carefully because the battle would continue at dawn. The lady was a disciple of the beggar's sect. So Gyolia, the student from Choi Yilge Heran's past, was one of the few people who brightened Namgong's loneliness. The lady challenged Aaron to a drinking race with her, and in exchange for winning to tell her his real name. The lady promised that if she lost, she would tell him her master's terrible secret. Thanks to her alcohol resistance, Jaran was able to drink more than CEO Gulja that day and learned the secret that the master had kept for 10 years. The secret was simple. Choi Gulja stole the cult leader's stash, opened it, and shamelessly ate it all at once. The secret did not belong to Choi Gulja but to the cult leader, so it was kept in the strictest confidence. Aaron had another plan in case the master was not convinced by the revealed secret. Choi Yilgi secretly used money begged on the streets, all to feed the orphans left after the war with the cult. Blood Yogi agreed. He already wanted to break ties with the Red Jade Guild. The decision to break ties with the guild surprised Jaren. The people associated with the guild had started behaving strangely recently. They gathered small cults around them, forming the appearance of an alliance. The rumors spread by the Red Jade Guild are directly related to the Namgong clan, which has enormous influence in the province. They had no official name but formed around the Iron Blood cult, so they could be called the Iron Blood Alliance. Haran hoped the alliance would enter the game and was happy. She wanted to finish the affairs within the clan and start carrying out a terrifying revenge on those who had offended her. Namgong gathered all who had behaved suspiciously in the main hall of the estate under the pretext of giving them one last chance to apologize. Oyangjong began to act according to the plan and enraged the guests with his shouts about the injustice of the Namgong family's decision. Everyone began to support Yangjong and condemn the actions of the clan and the baby. The plan began to be executed. Jaram called it a house tactic with Oyangyong. The Namgong family dog Choi ordered the arrest of all those supporting Yangyong and their transfer to cells. The guests began to shout about the injustice and tried to prove how devotedly they served the Namgong clan, but the clan's decision was final. Choi said that doubting his younger sister's abilities showed how weak was the strength of all those who said such terrible things. Choi knew that the seventh elder visited brothels and the Captain Guyang acquired a rare sword on the black market. They used the Namgong family's influence and resources for selfish purposes and indulged in corruption and debauchery. All this time they had been playing into the hands of the impious cults, the Dark Alliance. Thanks to them, the wealth and property of the Namgong clan that always adhered to the true path fell directly into the hands of the Dark Alliance. The mention of the Dark Alliance made Soren quite angry. Choi said that the younger sister found a way to stop the rumors that the Red Jade Guild was spreading and solved the problem. The clan leader asked for an answer about who had truly served faithfully the Namgong family. All this time, the untalented sister or the traitors to the true path, the brother and sister, clearly planned this whole act in advance. Haran thought that now the traitors would feel what it was like for her to live in the past. Everyone around her, including her family, despised her, subjecting her to ridicule, scorn, and eternal doubt. She had to wander from house to house without finding refuge anywhere. It was a miserable and maddening life, but now everything was different today. Nothing will remain of the old foundations of the clan, and Heran will say goodbye to negative emotions, ridicule, harassment, and shame. Soren said it was time to start a new part of the evening. Soso and the young god were moving the chests. Beautiful music was playing. It was a new birthday celebration for Jairan. Kambu appeared in front of his little sister and congratulated her. Aran's birthday had already passed and she was surprised that they were celebrating it again. The brothers worked hard to organize new and true holidays for the little one. Kambu guided the girl toward the gifts. They kept them in a pavilion named after Aran. Now the girl owned the entire building. The family built an entire building, so Aaron would feel comfortable. Choi waited with a smile for the girl's reaction. She was very happy. Haran immediately asked if she could bring the dog and the snake there that she had recently found. She found it barely alive on the way home and treated it, gave it water and food. The conversation between Haran and Choi was interrupted by Achan asked if the black snake as thick as a pinky finger was the same one Namgong had picked up. It was her. It was a gift that Achan, a 1,000-year-old black venomous viper, had prepared in advance. Achan decided that the dangerous and venomous snake would be an excellent guardian for his sister, and kept it in a jar for a long time to tame it. The viper had been living in the container that Heron wanted to examine all this time, and that was why Achan scolded her. Then Soren scolded the careless Achan for such a dangerous gift. The dog looked at her, and with pity the girl couldn't spend time with the silver wolf because she was busy. Many people were expelled from the mansion. There was a shortage of workers, so the girl had a lot of work to do. But for the dog's sake, Garan was willing to dedicate some time to play. However, the young guard forbade Garan from getting distracted from her work. Arani gave names to her animals. The older brothers gave the girl sacred animals. My sister brought strange eggs, and Kampu caught a wild mountain ferret for the baby's sake. The pets were precious gifts for the family, so Erin put her heart and soul into giving them worthy names. The guard assumed Erin had finished her day's business, so he went to report on the results of the task the girl had entrusted to him. The guard claimed he saw everything with his own eyes and asked if the girl really wanted to go there without telling anyone. The baby assured me everything would be fine. Gambu, who appeared nearby, asked why the girl had brought the guard with her. The young man was not pleased with the company of the third night. Kambu knew the city well, so he could guide the girl and her guard to the right place. Haran took Kangwa with her so her family wouldn't scold her, but with him, the likelihood of an unforeseen incident increased exponentially. Kangwoo and Geran patiently waited for the young guard. He went with them, because he knew that too, troublemakers couldn't be left alone without supervision. He had a bad feeling, Kangwoo showed the girl. The market she had wanted to visit for a long time. The girl felt sick because she had to jump the fence. It was impossible to go through the main entrance, otherwise onlookers would immediately gather and ruin the plan by announcing to everyone the existence of the young Namgung. The girl wanted to walk quietly through the market. Shook inside and had nothing to say in response. Kangwoo and Geran sat on the ground and devoured delicious steamed buns. Aaron called the orphans who were peeking around the corner. She offered them food. Steamed buns in exchange for interesting stories. One of the orphans whispered that such a noble lady wouldn't be interested in stories. The girl wanted to hear rumors, ghost stories, or answers to her questions. The girls asked what exactly the young woman wanted to know. The girl asked if they knew where the lair of darkness was. No matter how hard the Iron Blood Alliance tried to wrest some influence from the Namgung family, it was nothing more than a collection of small cults. However, the sudden and unexpected alliance gained strength thanks to an event that was about to happen. The grandson of the emperor's main tutor, whom the ruler himself adored, was kidnapped. A mysterious group called the Lair of Darkness was behind the kidnapping. If Aaron remembered correctly, their base was in a quiet corner, and they used children as messengers whose deaths would not raise suspicion. Those children who were now before Haran could lead them directly to the Lair of Darkness. The first thing Haran wanted was to get her grandson out so that the laurels would pass to the Namgung family, and the alliance would receive a strong blow to its reputation. Aaron wanted to kill two birds with one stone. The children asked fearfully if the girl really wanted to go to the Lair of Darkness with her companions for these terrible people. Human life was equivalent to the life of an insect. Recently, they even started kidnapping children. Haran, Kangwoo, and Sik-young. They found the base of the dark dwelling. Following the children's warnings only motivated the little girl to stop her enemies. Kangwoo asked if the girl was seriously planning to enter the enemy's house. The girl was willing to do anything to stop the kidnapping of children. The heirs of the Namgung clan could not allow such a misfortune to happen in Anhui province. The children sent a message through snakes to the Namgung clan to warn the family. Geran had thought about this from the beginning. Kangwoo admired his sister's cleverness and promised to have her back. Haran began to mock his brother. Meanwhile, at the monastery gates, the strangers talked about the leaders who appeared unexpectedly. The emperor's tutor's grandson was kidnapped. Among the children they grabbed was that very boy. The man thought about selling the children as soon as possible. An accomplice interrupted his thoughts, asked to send a message to the leader of the Pure Moon cult. Their help might be needed to transport the children. It turns out the Pure Moon cult was mixed with the evil one. The leader of the Clear Moon sect had always been close to the leader of the Iron Blood Alliance, but actually acted behind their backs. The leader became more brazen after receiving the Nazoran guard position. Aaron always found it strange that such a weak group like the Alliance managed to save the Imperial Master. It is likely that the Dark Dwelling was originally allied with the Iron Blood Alliance. They saved the child they themselves had kidnapped. There were 2 doors at the entrance. The girl suggested that she and Kimbu separate and check both doors. Kampu could not let his little sister go alone, but he agreed despite the danger. Aaron had to wait for the moment when he could save her behind the door. Namgung chose was a prison. She asked the captives if there was a child named Seomun Yunho among them. The children did not know any child by that name. Haran introduced himself and said he had come to rescue the captive children. A small palm appeared among the children's hands, asked how the girl knew their location. Aaron asked the boy not to worry and promised to rescue him. The little girl obtained an innovative development from the Namgung family from one of the most talented masters of the clan, a master key. During the time when Geran was known as the sword demon, she often made a living opening locks. There were no strong locks for her. She promised to open the lock quickly. The boy watched enthusiastically. As Aaron used the master key finally, the lock gave way and clicked from the hallway. Unknown voices began to be heard. Yuno immediately pulled Jiren toward her cell to hide her. The frightened children fell on top of each other. The beautiful dream of Heron's attempt to save Seomun Yuno in a big way was frustrated. Heron clenched his fists. If only he knew martial arts. Then he could have shattered the camera into pieces and I would have beaten up all the kidnappers. But the girl was too arrogant and lost her chance. She was a simple girl who had no talent for martial arts as an adult. Heron heard that she was too impatient, and that she could learn if she gave herself more time. Heron couldn't believe she would have learned martial arts if she had waited a little longer. The master urged everyone to listen carefully. Heron's 9th yin meridian was blocked so his body couldn't accumulate and release internal energy. Heron had never felt a single grain of energy within himself, much less the 9th yin meridian. But now the meridian was almost healed. Usually the ancient furious fox techniques were used to treat these cases, and most people died due to the clash of yin and yang energies. The one who treated Jiren set specific restrictions so that Namgung wouldn't suffer damage in the process. This man transferred part of his own energy to Geran to avoid the yin and yang conflict and ensure slow healing. If Jiren tries to concentrate internal energy, she will rely on the yang element. So only after the yin is restored will the restriction be lifted, so Aran was left waiting helplessly again. The kidnappers were in front of the camera. They were looking for a child named Seomun Yunho but didn't know what he looked like. Jaeran stood up and said she was Shomun Unjung. The kidnappers were surprised. They couldn't believe the Imperial Master's grandson was dressed like a girl. They said they came to save Shomun Yunho, one of the kidnappers. Admitted he expected better manners and grabbed the baby by the neck, pulling him close. First, he decided to teach him some manners. The girl covered herself with her hands, expecting the blow. The man held his bloodied side. Soren hugged the baby and lowered his sword. No one had the right to touch the youngest daughter of the Namgung clan. A light smell of ink, the subtle scent of lotus flowers, and a familiar way of embracing. Definitely it was Soren's sister who came to the baby's aid in the Namgung clan. Only two stood out for their extraordinary martial skill, the elegant and formidable sword of Choi Namgung and the wild sword that cuts the sky of Gangu Namgung. But no one spoke of the phoenix art of Soren Namgung, who often took care of the household. She urged the girl to stay there and promised to return soon. The girl grabbed her sister by the clothes and stopped her. Soren seriously planned to fight alone against the leader of the unorthodox sect. Even Choi and Kang Woo risked their lives fighting the leader. Soren could have been injured or even killed in the fight with him. Soren asked the girl not to get upset and not to think about the danger. She only cared if the kidnapper had threatened the baby. Arana felt Soren smiled softly in response. She raised her sword and asked the kidnapper to drop his weapon. To be able to spare his life, he refused. The thundering energy shown. Haran remembered the conversations. They always called her boring. It was said that the precious young lady of the Namgung clan had a golden neck. Since she could not bow for her mistakes, Aran found this strange, and all those who mocked Namgung anyway or tried to intimidate her were struck by lightning and were crippled for life. It was so inexplicable it seemed like divine punishment. Aran always believed that heaven was on her side. But the divine punishment was always her sister. She always took care of her younger sister and protected her from behind by eliminating her aggressors. Aran's doubts dissipated, so now everything was perfectly clear to her. She was too young and proud to admit it. And now finally I saw my sister's true strength and character, her selfless love. She also won this battle. The girl hugged Soren gratefully. Now she understood how much Soren had done for her. Sester called Canva. For a moment, Aran forgot she was no longer alone, that there were those willing to risk their lives for her. She wanted to change something about herself, become more agreeable so her loved ones would stop suffering because of her. Choi hugged the baby and calmed her. However, the baby refused to go back home. She wanted to escort the Imperial Master's grandson and all the innocent children home, and accept those who had no family in the clan Namgung. As always, Aran worried first about others. The monastery was filled with children's laughter. Kambu put the baby on her back and took her home. A child's hand modestly tugged on Jaren's clothes. The baby clarified the name of her savior. He asked why Aran had put herself in danger and pretended to be him. He thanked the girl and promised her to definitely repay the debt. Harana felt with a smile Imperial Master's residence. They asked the boy why he left home wearing a woman's dress. The baby caused concern throughout the neighborhood. He was only pretending to be Shomin Yunho. The real one was now talking to him. The boy agreed to exchange letters with the youngest daughter of the Namgung clan, and the girl teased him. Yunho asked if Jaren was as beautiful as they said. The boy blushed and admitted it was true. Thanks to determination, time flew by. The girl looked around confused at the forest. Where she was, it was unfamiliar and seemed strange to her. The girl began to worry, because she was starting to have visions. After all, they couldn't leave her alone. The animal ghost suddenly pressed against Jaren's leg and startled her. Images and visions began to appear transparent around us. The visions were too realistic to be a dream, and the girl thought she had fallen under the influence of a spell. The visions unsettled her. It was as if her whole life was passing before her eyes. She began to remember. The last thing she remembered was that Unjan had suddenly fallen. He was seriously ill, and without the elixir there was no hope to save him. Heron followed the memories of his past life and needed to find the legendary herb. She even argued with Kambu, who insisted on going with her. Aaron went into the right hole and filled the container with the elixir. It was a vision of the guardian of the herb in his past life. Heron had heard a lot about this place, but had never been there and didn't know what to expect. The baby decided to wait for her family. She was still helpless and couldn't manage on her own. Suddenly a familiar voice was heard. It was Kangu's voice. Because of the fog, the girl slipped and fell. Erin fell from a great height but felt no pain. Her body grew back. There was a forest around the vision. But now it felt different, more real. It turns out it was all a dream, but reality hadn't changed at all. It made sense because her brothers were kind. The family became very close, the life in which Garen was not abandoned. Due to her lack of fighting skills, it was only a dream, a fleeting dream of what Aaron most desired. The dream still lived in Jaren's heart. Suddenly they called to Aaron. A majestic man appeared behind the trees. He said the guild leader offered Aaron 2 options. He asked why Namgung decided to return, giving up his happy life. Jaren remembered he was supposed to meet there with an informant introduced by the guild leader. Jaren asked the man to tell him about the blood cult. He refused to tell Aaron anything until she answered his question. Aaron only wanted revenge and nothing else. The man asked if Aaron could achieve her goal alone. Aaron asked him again to give her the location of the blood clan. The man said that with her current skills, revenge was impossible for Aaron and that she should accept help. Her clan fell. Her family died defending Aaron. No one could help her anymore. Aaron felt alone and abandoned. Now she only belonged to herself. The man said she was no longer alone. A soft warm light surrounded Herain. She opened her eyes and saw the worried faces of her family. How was it that Heron was in the forest and now couldn't move? Her hands were small again. Someone touched Heron's hand. It was Soren. She asked if the girl remembered her. Heron sat on the bed and looked around. She asked for a mirror to be brought to her. An adult girl looked at her from the reflection. She began to look like the girl from her dream.